Hi, welcome to Illuminating Pioneers of Art Therapy. Today we will be highlighting Pat B. Allen, an art therapist who regards herself as a naturalist, who has learned from thorough engagement in her own art processes and evolved her methodology for art therapy to centralize the process of art making, with therapeutic practices deriving from the act of creating rather than an outcome for analysis. She focuses on the mind-body connection and how that connects to the act of creating, the materials and the images our minds naturally create. This, Allen states, often is a lifelong process. Allen seeks to bring the process back to art and art back to everyday life. Some of the things we will talk about are her journey to becoming an art therapist, with a brief look at her childhood and education experiences. We will also take a look at how her career has evolved as this process has developed and been refined. We will examine her early influences and main publications that define her place as a pioneer in art therapy's history. Then we will take a look at her main process, the open studio process, and how its creation is functionally different from that of other practitioners. We will go through the steps of the process to better understand what she means by the creative source. And lastly, we will examine how our approach to art therapy continues to add variety to the field and strengthen the identity of art therapists. Early life. Pat Allen was born in 1952 in West Orange, New Jersey. She describes her earliest years as being highly concerned with the collective unconscious, with the ability to leave her body and connect to a deeper form of self at any time. She contributed some of this ability to the films she watched as a child, which she took to be documentaries, and her growing up next to a cemetery. This influenced her early interests in art. As an artist, she derives motifs from nature and spiritual interests, which would lead her to convert to Judaism at 27 years old. She has used art as a way to, as she states, further access her unconscious mind, to deal with the emotional turmoil of life, and to find a path between her soul and reality. It was this line of thinking that began her journey to deliver this experience to others. Education. She studied art at Tufts University and emphasizes the importance of writing in her work as her driving force in becoming an art therapist. She received her PhD in art therapy from Union University and has practiced as a registered art therapist since 1977. She began her education journey like many early art therapists as an artist with an interest in the mind. It is this identity that would lead her to question the balance between being an artist and being an art therapist. Career. She served as an adjunct professor for the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. She founded the Open Studio Project in Chicago and Studio Parties in Oak Park, Illinois. She continues to practice between Oak Park and Ojai, California, while conducting research on nature and what she calls feminine energy in the evolution of consciousness. She now practices through lectures, workshops, and exhibitions. Many of her current projects are available to view on her website, alongside a blog detailing her personal discoveries in the open studio process. Clinification. Allen founded the studio arts movement in 1992 as an alternative approach to the over-clinification of the field. Clinification is a term she used to describe the shift in practice that would favor outcomes and professionalism above the art-making process. This movement sought to make the art therapist an artist in residence, inviting people into the artist's studio. In this way, the art therapist is a facilitator to participants. The creative process is paramount and leads towards the ideology of Edith Kramer that form and content hold an equal measure of importance. Influences. Some of her role models include Florence Kane, who developed the scribble method; Elizabeth Layton, an artist whose contour drawing method was further developed for therapeutic use by Bob Alt, another art therapist; Edward Adamson, who opened a studio in a British mental hospital in 1946; Bolek Grygzinski, founder of the Living Museum in Queens; Henry Schaefer Zimmern, an art educator; and Sean McNiff, an art therapist. Others include her peers from the Open Studio Project, and those who she states find art making a crucial and sustaining part of life. All of these influences work to incorporate art into their healing. Whether for themselves or others, they found interest in natural processes. That is, processes that occurred without concern for an outcome. Art was used as communication between the mind and body without a pressure to figure the self out. Allen developed her processes to focus on these physical manifestations. The Open Studio Process. This led her to developing the Open Studio Process. Allen avoids terms such as art or art making, as the term art may encompass bad or good art, fine art, high art, or cheap art, and can be filled with pre-existing judgment. She refers to the outcomes as images. The Open Studio Process occurs in 4 steps: intention setting, art making, witness writing, and group sharing. The main goal being creating without pressure, too much concern for aesthetic, or fulfilling anyone else's needs besides the intentions you set. Step 1. The process begins by writing down a goal. This, referred to as an intention, is a way of orienting a session's expectations and easing into the activity. Allen states that any attempt to connect with the creative source, as she calls it, is a way to connect to your mind, your wants, and your needs. This first part then becomes almost meditative, to find what you are most interested in at the moment, and to name it and write it down. The creative source, she says, is alive and in all human beings, akin to a soul. Accessing it through art is a confrontation to know oneself. This is also why many of her practices seek to remove barriers of skill or judgment, as it can be intimidating to be confronted with one's own beliefs. She refers to this as art as a way of knowing, in which we will focus on the process of working with images somewhat more than the product, as she states. Step 2. The next step is to begin mark making, similar to the scribble method. There is no aesthetic goal here beyond communicating what we have set out to represent, in whatever form it takes. Allen comments that these images may be unpleasant, unsettling, or nonsensical, all of which has no negative implication, as the participant, facilitator, and peers will merely observe what comes about. Step 3. After a time when the participant feels concluded, they will write their observations. There is a general no-comment rule placed on participants to further avoid any feelings of judgment. Any statement made should avoid "I want," "I will," "I try" phrases, and merely be observations of recurring thoughts like "I explore," "I create," "I connect with." This is a time to sit with your images and materials, to feel that mind-body connection, and state or write down what either are saying or have been repeating throughout the process. Step 4. Inviting an outside perspective may be difficult at first, but with the no-comment rule, witness writing, and a direct line to your intentions, this step should be about identifying emotions and fostering community. Allen says to treat your images as a friend passing by. You will take the time to sit down and greet them, introduce them to others if you're in a group, and become comfortable with their presence. Knowing them and allowing them to live in your world and encounter others without judgment that can hold people back from image making or chatting in the first place is the goal. Art therapy. Allen took a look at her own identity, and in questioning that gave early art therapists a choice. Is the art therapist left behind in clinical practice? If art therapy is to be professional and aligned with the mental health field, should they be clinicians, or is art therapy a title and field of its own? This naturally led to some concerns of ethical boundaries, confidentiality, and dual relationships being too fluid. Allen states that her studio practices, where she offers courses, are not a new model for artists or art therapists, but that both processes can exist and be fruitful in a single setting. Key terms. Now let's review some of the terms Allen has introduced to us or reimagined in her work. Creative source. The innate ability to connect to oneself, which is present in all human beings and accessed through the art-making process. This can sometimes be referred to as the soul. Open studio process. A way to connect to the creative source by attending to inner energies and how they manifest into physical forms and images. The concentration is on the process, not the product. No comment rule. Limiting imagery response to assisting in creating a judgment-free experience commonly faced when creating art. You want to make sure that these are active rather than passive statements, like, I will try to. You want to be in the moment. Referencing. Taking inspiration from past images or other participants and iterating new ones. Materials, images, and energies can all be called upon in the act of noticing and connecting. The most important part about the open studio process is that it is a communal process. It is to help connect people not only to their art, but to each other and to the world around them. Alan is constantly referencing how people exist in a context. If you'd like to see more of Alan's work and the studios which offer the open studio process, you can check out her website at patballen.com. Thank you for listening to Illuminating Pioneers of Art Therapy.